In a desire to find Japan, an Englishman becomes a weapon to prevent civil war. 1600 year. For decades, Portuguese Catholics have profited enormously from trade with Japan. They concealed its whereabouts from European Protestants. A ruler died in Osaka, leaving behind an heir too young to succeed him. 5 warrior lords started a war for the rights to gain absolute power. John vowed to find the Japanese and claim this dark land. It's been many days. There is no more food or drinking water on the ship. At the beginning of the expedition, there were 5 ships with a crew of 500 men. Now there's only 1 ship floating, because of which the captain is about to sail back home. After a while, the Japanese went ashore to find food, but out of the fog, a ship appeared, its sails completely destroyed. An armed squad of soldiers was immediately dispatched to the ship. The entire crew is exhausted and sick, but John still has the strength to try to fight back against the soldiers. But obviously, he can't succeed. In another part of Japan, Daimyo Yoshi is walking with his son and a small guard. After the walk, he comes to Osaka Castle. Its owner, Lord Ishida, asks Yoshi to come to his private quarters. The castle is guarded by many warriors. After a few minutes, Yoshi meets Ishida. He doesn't like the fact that after Taiko's death, Yoshi has been gathering forces. Yoshi wonders what forces he's amassed. Ishida replies, the 6 marriages he agreed to, which caused the fiefdom to double in size. Yoshi declares that he is happy with his present domain, and he is not going to be the first to break the peace. Ishida doesn't understand. Then notice Sister Ochiba was taken to Yoshi's castle this morning. Perhaps she was taken hostage so that Yoshi would be safe at this meeting. Yoshi assures them that the girl is his fiancée. The council votes and demands the girl's return. Otherwise, Yoshi will lose all his titles. A warrior from Yoshi's squad sees this as a betrayal. His master always lives according to the law. Yoshi asks Tadayoshi to sit down. Ishida gives 7 days to release the heir's mother. After that, the council will decide what fate awaits Yoshi. After the meeting, he meets with his friend Hiromatsu. The man is sure that as soon as they hand over the girl, they will be sentenced to execution. Yoshi realizes this, but if they start a war now, all 4 armies will unite and destroy them. Yoshi has a mission for Hiromatsu to get to the barbarian's ship. Before leaving, Yoshi wonders if Hiromatsu made a mistake by taking his side. The ship is brought to the nearest village, and all the Englishmen are put behind bars. The sailors don't understand how they got to China, but John is certain. The Japanese are in front of them. One of the sailors is sure that as soon as the Portuguese tell the Japanese who they are, they will be killed immediately. John asks them not to think that. As they sailed here, every day could be their last, but still they found Japan. Lord Yabushido came to the village today. He wants to see the sailors. A couple of warriors come down to the cage. John takes one of them hostage and gives him an ultimatum. He will personally talk to Yabushido, or the soldier will die. The man thinks the man in front of him is Portuguese and asks the villager to translate his words. All the inhabitants of this village have converted to Christianity, and anyone who doesn't like the sailors being kept in cages gets their heads blown off. Yabushido orders the priest to find out what the man wants. John has to confess that he's English, and 2 months ago the ship went off course. The priest is convinced it's a lie. He calls John a pirate. From the look in Yabushido's eyes, John understands. The priest is not going to translate his words and simply conceals that there are other countries in Europe besides Portugal. Yabushido sentences the entire team to death. John tears off the cross and shows that he does not belong to this faith. Yabushido changes his mind and asks to take the man to the house and wash him. At this time, Yoshi meets the heir to the throne. The two have a good relationship. Yoshi asks the boy to learn a lot of not only fighting skills, but also political skills. The woman tells him that Yoshi is feared because of his great lineage. She knows he doesn't want to be Shogun, but the other rulers don't care. This tree was planted on Yeikyo's birthday. The support keeps the tree growing, just like Yoshi. In order for Yabushido to be feared, he still sentenced 1 sailor to execution in boiling water. His screams spread through the village for hours. A new day arrives. John wakes up inside the house. He doesn't know how Japanese culture works and accidentally breaks through the door. He is given local clothing. Tadayoshi's ship arrives in the village. He immediately asks where the weapons from the ship are. He is told that there were 500 muskets on board, 20 cannons, and several crates of silver and gold. Lord Yoshi confiscates all these items. Yabushido objects because the ship is in his domain. Tadayoshi has another proposal for this. Yabushido has to give in. John will be taken to Osaka, accompanied by a Spaniard named Rodriguez. A couple hours later, a storm begins to brew. Being an experienced sailor, John's advice is to steer the ship into the wave. Rodriguez cuts the rope so John can move around the ship. One of the soldiers falls overboard, but John manages to save the man. Suddenly, Rodriguez falls into the water, and John instantly throws an oar to him. Yabasudo descends into the hold, and seeing John, orders him to row to survive. He himself joins the soldiers. John then assumes the role of navigator. When the storm subsides, John sets out to find Rodriguez. He doesn't care that all Japanese are savages, but in John's homeland, they don't abandon their own. Yabasudo explains to Tadayoshi what the man wants. They manage to find Rodriguez, but he is too low. John is not allowed to take any risks, and then he suggests that Yabasudo go down himself. The man takes this as a challenge and starts rappelling. The rope breaks, and Yabasudo falls down, but he and Rodriguez survive. Yabasudo pulls Rodriguez to a safe height, but a wave knocks him down. Yabasudo is about to die with honor, but at that moment the rope falls, and everyone pulls Yabasudo out. John is amazed at what he has seen, and bows to Yabasudo. Tomorrow the troop continues on its journey. The moment Yabasudo draws his sword, flashes before John's eyes. Rodriguez shows John's personal diary, which contains information about all the Catholic bases on the way to Japan. All this information will be given to the Portuguese. John tries to kill the Spaniard, but he grabs the gun and asks the question, when John sees Osaka, will he really think of Europe as the pinnacle civilization? Maybe fate has brought him to Japan for a greater purpose, to help Yoshi. 1 year ago, the shogunate asks his son to come. He promises that when he dies, he will be reborn in a pure land. The order is given for everyone to leave, but the shogun asks Yoshi to stay. They are true friends to each other, recalling funny moments from Shogunate's life. The man realizes his son is in danger, and to keep him safe, he offers Yoshi to be the sole regent until the boy grows up. Yoshi is stunned by this offer. If he becomes regent, all the enemies will unite and kill not only Yoshi, but also the boy. In that case, the shogun will set up a council of 5 men, including Yoshi. This will create a political stalemate and prevent a civil war from breaking out. He also asks Yoshi to teach his son, and most importantly, to learn the lesson that the highest-ranking man in the state will always be the loneliest. Rodriguez shows the local priests John's journal. They're going to translate the entire text. As a reward for the information, Rodriguez receives a bag of gold. After a while, Martin arrives at the castle. He promises John that he will translate his words without lying. Their conversation is interrupted by Lord General Ishido. Martin asks John to sit quietly. Ishido doesn't understand why the last days of his life. Yoshi spends the last few days of his life communicating with the stranger. Yoshi explains that he is of no value to him and orders John to be taken to prison. A meeting is called for tonight. Yoshi's spies bring word that this barbarian is bothering the Portuguese. Soon, the Christian regents will protest the barbarian's presence in Osaka. Yoshi plans to sow discord between Ishido and the Christian lords. John also learns that all the lords serve Ishido, and they are going to execute Yoshi. If Yoshi declares John his ally, he will hardly be able to leave Japan alive. The vote begins tomorrow, but the Christian lords demand the barbarian's execution, or there will be no vote. In prison, a priest tells them that an army armed with European weapons has been established in the fortress of Mikado, but none of the lords here know about it. All Christian power rests on the riches of a black ship. This ship is docked at Osake and can't sail without Yoshi's dispersal. Ishido comes to Yabasudo. He needs information on who this barbarian is. Yabasudo tells him that Yoshi believes there is a rift in the council, but Ishido is sure it can't be. Yabasudo hints that after Yoshi's death, Ishido will be the next to be killed, and he won't be able to defeat the lords with the church's support. But if he has a man who can keep the barbarian on a short leash, things could change. Ishido sees it as a prospect, but he's already had to approve the barbarian's execution. Yabasudo hints that there is something he can do. The executioners summon John, but take him outside the city for the execution site. There they are attacked by Yabasudo and his soldiers. John thanks them for saving him. Yabasuda then takes John to Yoshi. He tells him that the executioners were attacked by bandits, but he was so fortunate to be passing nearby. Their interpreter today will be the heir's mother, Mariko. Yoshi wants to know how England works. He assures Yoshi that the Queen of England is very smart and would like to be an ally for Yoshi. He then asks John to draw a real-world map. John compliments that they have set up a Portuguese military base in Macau. Arms are traded there, and Japanese mercenaries, Ronins, are in the service. This information shocks the listeners, and Yoshi asks to be shown where all the Portuguese bases are. John also tells them that the world is divided into two parts. Japan is in the Portuguese power zone, which makes them consider Japan their prey. Mariko calls this a lie, but John swears to his god. To prevent John from being killed, Yoshi gives out a private quarters in this castle. In the evening, Martin tries to get a dispensation for the departure of the black ship, but Yoshi remembers a recent conversation and decides not to stamp it. Martin would rather explain why their church is building secret military bases. At night, an assassin sneaks into the castle. John runs away screaming. The assassin easily kills several guards, but Yoshi easily defeats the girl. The guards are convinced Ishido has declared war, but Yoshi assures them it's not him. It isn't long before the stranger moves into Yoshi's quarters, and Yoshi himself into John's quarters. It was John who the assassin wanted to kill. Towards morning, Yabushige came to Lord Toranaga's palace and surrendered his weapons. Toranaga immediately asks what he knows about the Amida sect. Yabushige says they are skilled killers. Toranaga then wonders how much Yabushige would pay for his head. He understands that he himself is considered the instigator of the night incident, and he is ready to lay down his head. However, Toranaga does not understand where he got such an idea, because Yabushige is his faithful ally. Of course, if Ishido didn't win him over to his side, who visited his chambers, Yabushige says Ishido offered a seat on the council, but he doesn't need it. All he wants is to add the province of Suruga to his domain. Toranaga wants John and Fuji to take refuge in his village. Martin informs the ship's captain that the black ship will remain in port. Toranaga began to better understand how their monopoly on trade with China benefits. He needs a report of exchange rates. Obviously, the captain doesn't like this because they are the ones who bring the profit, which means they have to dictate the terms. The captain orders word that the black ship is preparing to sail. He orders Rodriguez to begin loading the goods. An hour later, Yabushige assembled his squad to transport important people safely. At the moment of departure, Ishido approaches the castle. According to the agreement, Toranaga had to give him 1 day's notice. The samurai tries to block the road, but Hiramatsu asks not to aggravate the situation. Ishido checks the carts and one of the women becomes ill. All the guards are distracted, and under this noise Toranaga hides in the cart. Before leaving, Ishido says that his men will escort them to the galley. Even Mariko didn't know about this plan, but if they saw him, they would be killed too. More guards appear in front of the gate to check the carts. John realizes that they are in big trouble and tries to stop the man. He talks about the inadmissibility of spying on women. Mariko supports him, but John still gets hit. At the very last moment, he closes the lid with his hand and Yosen orders them to pass through. John's trick worked. On the way to the village, Mariko reveals that her husband Toda is a very strong and respected warrior, and she also has a son, after which she asks about John's life and he begins to remember his life in London. But he is interrupted by a sudden attack on their squad. Mariko is sure that this is not Ishido. Toda returns fire, but there are many more enemy archers. Toranaga gets out of the cart, surprising his son and Todd. Toranaga says that it is the Christians who are trying to kill John. The attacking squad is led by Kiyama. He is informed that there are Ishido people in the convoy, but he still orders everyone to be killed along with John. The swordsmen run to attack. Toranaga kills some of the attackers, but the guards, when they see Toranaga, speak of betrayal. Josen gives the order to catch Toranaga, and now the number of enemies has doubled. Mariko grabs Yari and tries to help Toranaga. John joins the fight. Kiyama doesn't understand why the enemies are fighting each other. After killing 2 warriors, Yabushige asks to talk about the plan in the future. Toda asks to run to the ship before it's too late. His squad will delay the enemies and catch up with them a little later. Kiyama sees John heading towards the ships and directs people to intercept them. Later, Mariko and John reach the village and board the boats. An alarm begins in the settlement, and everyone runs to the port to catch Toranaga. Toda runs among them. John wants to come back, but Yabushige refuses. Toda is a skilled warrior. He kills some of the samurai and says goodbye to Mariko. Toranaga immediately stands up and thanks Toda, after which he runs to the attack and hides behind the houses. John once again realized how brave the Japanese are. The squad boards the ship. John finds it strange that all the water is covered with boats and asks how often people fish here. It turns out that archers who converted to Christianity are sitting on the boats. The black ship stands next to them. John hints that it cannot be sunk. Toranaga orders to swim to the ship. Rodriguez immediately recognizes John, who asks their captain for an audience with Toranaga. He is ready to give permission to leave the island, as well as 5,000 silver coins and a place to build a church. If the black ship will help sail away and help transfer Kiyama and Ono to the Toranaga side. The priest will try to fulfill his request. But on the way out, the captain makes one more demand. John will remain on his ship. Martin shows John's personal journal to prove that John is not an ordinary merchant, but a pirate. Mariko tells John that he will have to be left in the settlement. However, he is not going to lose and asks the captain of the other ship to overtake. Christians are preparing to fire, but they cannot damage the black ship. Then the captain wants John to crash into the rocks. Rodriguez doesn't want John to die and doesn't follow the captain's orders. Because of this, John leaves the danger zone. Mariko is glad that John was able to swim away. A new day is coming. Hiromatsu came to Ishido with a personal message. He reveals that Toranaga is resigning from his position on the council. Ishido doesn't care. They will still vote to overthrow Toranaga. Hiromatsu says that according to the law, the vote can happen with 5 regents, but now there are only 4. Later, the whole party meets on John's ship. John is very sorry that Toda died. Toranaga thanks John for helping them get out of the city, but he needs to find out if John is really a pirate. Piracy is punishable by death. Although there is a war ahead of them, John must train his soldiers in foreign tactics. John wants only one thing, that the ship and its crew be returned to him. From this day on, John is Toranaga's vassal and receives the title of Hatamoto. This is a great honor for a person. At the end of the conversation, Toranaga suggests going for a swim. He is surprised by the diving technique and wants to learn how to do it. After seeing a couple of examples, Toranaga dives into the water with a proposal to race to shore. Omi receives a message from Osaka, and the village is being prepared to receive important guests. According to Hatamoto's status, John is entitled to a concubine. Fuji wants to refuse, but she has no choice. Toranaga tells Yabushige that he has now resigned from his position on the council. Yabushige considers this a mistake. All his vassals and allies are now enemies. Toranaga needs to commit seppuku. Toranaga will live until the official order comes. One way or another, Yabushige has an army loyal to him that will help them in future wars. Soldiers and Omi welcome guests. Yabushige immediately says that the barbarian has become Hatamoto and he needs a good home, after which all the warriors begin to shout a military salute in honor of Yabushige. He invites Toranaga to inspect the troops. This is a great honor for him. Toranaga raises his fan and everyone falls silent. Toranaga talks about the difficulties that await them, but protecting the honor of the Taiko dynasty comes first. After which Toranaga swims away, which Yabushige clearly didn't know about. John walks around the village to find his team. Maradzi reports that they have all been moved to another location, after which he wants to return to his ship, but he is forbidden. Mariko then shows John his new home. He is also entitled to several servants. Mariko will live in the guest room. John does not understand how long he will have to live here, and when the ship and its crew will be returned to him. Mariko asks to be abstinent. First, he needs to train the soldiers in foreign tactics. Afterwards, she explains what people with the title Hatamoto are entitled to. John tries to give up Fuji, but Mariko says that his refusal will offend Toranaga.
I'm bloody prisoner all over again, just with better living quarters.
Late at night, Omi says that while Toranaga is away, all firearms are in the hands of Yabushige. The council can still find the 5th regent and execute Toranaga. Then Yabushige will have a weapon left that he can give to Ishido. These words make Yabushige think. At this time, Fuji approaches John. He tries to explain that she can do whatever she wants. Mariko explains that the concubine cannot sleep while the master is awake, and walking on moss is not respectful. Before she leaves, Mariko places the package in which John's gun was wrapped. A new day is coming. Omi insists that weapons are not allowed today. John objects because they have swords, but he is completely unarmed. Samurai are preparing for battle. Fuji offers to give the guns to her, and John fulfills her demand to Omi's surprise. He again wants to take the weapon, but Fuji points the gun at him, because of which he has to retreat.
That's very good. Very good.
The Yabashige army deploys into the field. They already have basic skills in the form of cleaning and loading muskets. The Portuguese first brought guns 50 years ago. Yabashige is important to use battle tactics that are unfamiliar to their enemies. First, John wants to talk about the siege of Malta. Mariko understands that he is talking about the battle that took place before he was born, but does not give John away. John believes that infantry tactics are useless compared to English naval combat. His ship will be able to destroy the castle walls in just one day. The soldiers bring the ship's cannon. Yabashige finds it impossible to hit the target. The Portuguese have already tried to aim, but they failed. After all the calculations, each target was destroyed. Yabashige is amazed by what he sees. John spends the next few hours training the soldiers. On the way to the village, he already learns their language. So many subsequent days pass. John suggests that his crew build new ships. Over the past night, Mariko read the diary and hints that Toranaga will not fight against the Portuguese. Later, John began using chain cannonballs, which increase area damage, but he is interrupted by a messenger. The Ishido detachment is moving from the west. Yozen at the head of the detachment. When he met them, he immediately noticed that Yabashige seemed to be preparing for war and gives him an official call to Osaka, but he refuses. Yozen calls him a traitor. Yabashige says that he is preparing to help Ishido at the right time. Yozen can come to their training and see everything in person. He accepts his invitation. Omi asks not to go anywhere. He might be killed. Yabashige is well aware that he has no choice. During dinner, John becomes very curious about what Mariko is eating and apologizes for his bad manners with Fuji when they first met, after which he gives her his gun. She will be the most formidable lady in Japan. Fuji gets up and leaves. John even thought that he had insulted her, but Fuji wants to give away her late father's swords. This is a symbol of courage. John is incredibly grateful but can't take the heirloom. However, Fuji insists, after which he enjoys the fermented beans and describes them as rotten cheese. Before going to bed, he decides to sit in the hot springs, but is interrupted by Mariko, and he offers to sit next to you. They tell each other about their lives, and when they return home, they make love. Training starts tomorrow. Yoshi will be the commander, but for some reason he orders the soldiers to disperse. He wants to fight Yozen in order to defend Toranaga's honor. Yabashige asks to lay down his arms. As soon as Yoshi gives the signal, cannons installed in another part of the field begin to destroy the Yozen squad.
There's no one going to stop him.
Do not intervene.
With the last of his strength, Yozen calls Yoshi a coward. Samurai don't fight like that, but he doesn't care. Mariko realizes that a war has begun, but before they had time to remove the corpses, a huge army approached, led by Toranaga and the surviving Toda. The regents gather in Osaka. They want to condemn Toranaga for his escape. This trick disgraces the heir. Ishido is glad that the entire board is on the same page, but Toranaga's resignation made the trial impossible. Everyone nominates their candidacy. Everyone converges on Maeda. Toranaga says that Toda was helped by a detachment of Ronin, but by the time they reached Edo, only 2 remained alive. Mariko gives a notebook where John's every action is recorded. Toranaga wants her to stay at John's house and act as a translator. Her husband will live with them, and he calls Yoshi's action incredibly stupid. Ishido uses this murder as a casus belli. At this time, Ishido receives Jozen's head. While hunting, John managed to catch a pheasant. John wants to make jerky. Fuji is afraid that the meat will rot, but John still forbids touching the bird, adding that whoever touches it will die. Then Fuji is going to order his own dishes and knives for John, so that their food will not spoil from his experiments. Going out into the corridor, she meets Todd. He doesn't like the fact that he has to live under the same roof with a barbarian. Yabashige met with Toranaga and spoke about the foreigner's tactics. Toranaga hopes to see this for himself and asks what Yabashige will do since he was ordered to return to Osaka and swear allegiance to Ishido. Yabashige replies that he will stay with Toranaga and is not afraid of expulsion. Toranaga understands that Ishido will be offended by Jozen's murder and will come with an army to their territory. This is the best outcome they could achieve. Omi receives command with an artillery regiment. He wants to cede the regiment to Yabashige. This statement insults him. After all, this weapon already belongs to him. Yabushige sends his right-hand man to Osaka to negotiate with Ishido before it is too late. John welcomes Todd into his home, but their communication is hampered by flies and a rotten smell throughout the area. In the evening, John happily demonstrates a dish from his homeland called rabbit stew. He had to replace a few ingredients, but it doesn't fit. Toda insults John, but Mariko translated it to mean John was really enjoying the food. This makes John laugh, and Todd deliberately imitates John, who accepts the challenge, after which he pours out the soup, pours a full bowl of sake and drinks, after which they begin to outdrink each other. The duo argues a bit, and Toda orders him to choose a pillar to shoot at. John thinks this is nonsense because he is too drunk, but Toda, even in this state, hits the same point. A couple of centimeters from Mariko, John understands that Mariko is his property, but asks him to treat her better. This makes Todd laugh, because Mariko comes from a spoiled family. She reveals that she is the daughter of the late ruler, who is considered a traitor and a murderer. Her entire family was executed, and only she survived. After which, Mariko gets up and leaves without listening to Toda's orders. John wakes up to the sounds of a fight and runs to help Mariko, but when he came running, Toda had already disappeared. John is amazed by what he sees, but Marika asks to leave. A couple of minutes later, John finds Todd. He places the sword in front of him and apologizes for disturbing the harmony of John's house. It's all about sake. John considers this an important reason for the fight, but still he leaves. In the morning, Toranaga visits Muradzi. He is his spy. At the moment, Yabushige is trying to find him, and Toranaga wants Muradzi to frame someone. While John was away, his gardener removed a rotten pheasant, since John said that if anyone touches his bird, he will be executed. Because of this, he had to be executed. John is amazed by what he hears, because they didn't even ask him. Fuji takes responsibility and is ready to die, but John asks them to leave. Many months have passed since the soldiers began training, and John wants to return to his homeland. He's tired of no one here valuing other people's lives. The gardener died from empty space. Mariko says that according to the law, no one could touch the bird, but it was disturbing the entire village. And although John thinks that the bird was not important, but that's exactly what his words made her. Mariko adds that there was a village meeting, and they chose a person who would steal the bird. Then the gardener volunteered. Recently, he was mortally ill, and lastly, he helped the entire village. John is very sorry that a person died because of him, when suddenly a strong earthquake begins. The whole slope collapses, and Toranaga falls down. John runs after him and notices the vein, and under it is a buried Toranaga. He has lost his swords, and John offers to take Fuji's father's swords. Toranaga accepts the gift. Due to the collapse of the mountain, most of the army was completely destroyed, just like the village. John runs home and finds Fuji alive, after which he begins to clean the garden that his gardener was doing. Ochiba arrives in Osaka. It is very important to her that the council be restored as quickly as possible, because she fears for her son's future. Ishido is ready to protect the heir at the cost of his life. Ochiba replies that then the time for politics must end. From now on, the council will obey only her. 22 years ago, young Mariko's father introduces her to a vassal. He also had a daughter, Ochiba, and he and Mariko trained in martial arts. After a while, the father gave Mariko away to Toda, and he hopes that sooner or later she will understand why he did this. In real time, the army buried the dead. Toranaga says that death is only a confirmation of life itself, and asks John to come over. He saved his life 2 times and donates land near Kanagawa with an annual income of 600 koko, as well as the rank of Admiral of the Fleet and Commander of a cannon regiment. These swords will be a symbol of his devotion. A new day is coming. Omi doesn't like that a barbarian is commanding their regiment. Yabushige doesn't understand how he could care. A great war may begin very soon. There is heavy rain outside. John decided to stay home and heard Mariko praying in Japanese, after which he prays with her in his own language. Toranaga calls Toda. He didn't like that Toda insulted John's house and offers to divorce Mariko, but Toda can't. He is sure that Mariko should be grateful to him for saving her life, but she has always been cold to him, and she begs him for death. Then Toranaga orders not to approach Mariko. Later, John comes to see him. He wants to know why Toranaga gave him a cannon regiment. After all, he won't be able to help him the way Toranaga wants. However, if the ship is returned to him, he will hunt the Portuguese, which will reduce the strength of Toranaga's enemies. But he calls the Portuguese allies. John once again says that the Portuguese are driven only by greed. When John left, Toranaga asks to hire the best girl for John, and Mariko will have to go with him as a translator. That night, Ishido began hostilities. Hiromatsu reports that Ishido has taken all the regents hostage and is keeping them in his castle. It's obvious that he wants to force them to vote against Toranaga. They need to leave as quickly as possible, but the women will not be able to escape, and they ask Hiromatsu to warn Toranaga. The priest is not allowed into the castle. Ishido suspects a plot to kill the heir. Martin understands perfectly well that Ochibo is behind everything. The priest doesn't think a woman can have that kind of power, but Martin asks not to underestimate her. The best thing they can do now is to form an alliance with Toranaga. Not everyone on the council likes to sit in the castle as hostages. Kiyama is confident that once they vote out Toranaga, they will be released, but the other man suspects that now they will always be hostages, and Japan will soon come to an end. Ochiba remembers the day when the new ruler's wife came to her. They never had an heir, and she chose Ochiba as the concubine who would provide an heir to the throne. And so it happened. After performing at the theater, Itado, who played the role of the emperor, is asked to join the council and prevent Toranaga from harming the heir. After some time, Hiromatsu reaches the village of Yabushige. He says that every day their allies are joining the ranks of their enemies. Toranaga hopes that they will see the truth and rebel against Ishido. However, this will take too much time. Hiromatsu suggests proceeding with the Crimson Sky plan. You only need to make one raid on Osaka Castle, but as brutal as possible. With just one blow, the entire council will be destroyed, and Yabushige will become the sole regent for the heirs. That is, Shogun. Omi considers this too risky. Yabushige also never started a war first and had no desire to become shogun. Mariko negotiates with the owner of the tea houses to receive John in the best possible way. The woman asks for a lot of money, but he promises that John will be incredibly happy, just like Mariko. Late at night, Mariko takes John to a tea house. Mariko translates everything the girl says, and John can't take his eyes off Mariko. Before leaving for another room, John bows to Mariko and touches her hand. A new day is dawning. John returns to the village. Kiku will be waiting for them to meet again. In Osaka, there is a vote to accept Itado. Almost everyone is in favor, except Sugiyama. He sees no clear evidence against the heir. He won't vote until all the hostages are released. Ishido's desire for war offends Taiko's last will, and he appears to be the only one left loyal to the state. In a private meeting with Ochibo, Ishido proposes to get rid of Sugiyama. Tomorrow, Sugiyama runs into Ishido's squad, and they are all killed. For the others, it is said that the squad was attacked by bandits. But Yoshi realizes that soon he will be illegally suspended, and the clan will be declared enemies. Yoshi doesn't want the land, but if the heir is threatened, he must start the Crimson Sky. Everyone supports his decision. 46 years ago, Taranaga's army destroyed his enemies. Japan is finally at peace. Mizoguchi accepts the defeat of a child and asks to be mentioned in the annals. Then he commits seppuku in real time. Yoshi's brother's army approaches the village. Saegi, but is happy to help Yoshi. Later, John approaches him. Yoshi wants him to behave as decently as possible at the evening dinner, and of the weapons, only swords. John wonders whether he will command Yoshi's fleet in the coming battle, but Yoshi hasn't decided yet. Mariko advises him not to broach the subject. John tries to ask more questions anyway. Mariko clearly makes it clear that now is not a good time, and before leaving, John asks her to tell him that he is ready for any twist of fate. Omisame comes to see Kiku, but she's busy, since she's bought out for Segi for a whole week. Omisame wants to talk to her anyway, and calls the tea house desecrated after the barbarian's visit. The woman hints that his thoughts weren't taken to Kiku that day. Fuji meets with Hiramatsu's grandfather. He has a small gift in the form of his parents' ashes. Fuji dreams of turning into ashes after fulfilling her obligations. Hiramatsu doesn't understand why she says that, Toward evening, all the important people are relaxing in each other's circle. John loses food from his chopsticks every now and then, which Todd clearly doesn't like. At the same time, Omisame tries to put bad thoughts about Mariko in Todu's head. Yoshi asks his uncle to tell him about his father, and Saegi recalls Yoshi's fighting adventures. Tomorrow they are to discuss the terms of a military alliance, but Saegi doesn't want to wait until tomorrow and offers to give him the province. This makes Yabushigi's mind go into a stupor. Saegi then declares that not all the legends about Yoshi are real. Most of them are embellished. And alas, he has already received a better offer. Seigi's army appears on the horizon. They've blocked all the roads out of the village. He drops a letter ordering the regents to return to Osaka and to answer for his treachery. Seigi became an ambassador and honored by the regents. All of Yoshi's rights and territories went to Seigi. For Yoshi, he has another letter ordering him to commit seppuku. Yoshi asks not to accept the letter. Yoshi is willing to consider the offer and will give an answer tomorrow. Upon returning to the village, John asks to be allowed to climb into the ship. Then he will check the hold and the bottom, after which they will escape down the canal. At this time, Yabushige meets with Seigi. He tried to make a secret peace with Ishido, but he refused. Ships with Ishido's crest are approaching the village. Todd wants to try to leave and hand over to the troops in Edo preparing for war. Hiromatsu suspects that Saegi's men are following all the trails. Yoshi meets with the owner of a tea house. She helps him realize that fate can always be changed. A little later, Todd gets twisted and thinks about killing John, but stops himself in time. In case Yoshi dies, he prepares an inheritance for his kin. But he's interrupted by Todd, who wants permission to take John's head. He doesn't like the way he looks at Mariko. Yoshi asks a counter-question. Since he suspects John, Mariko must respond with similar signals, which means he has to take her head too. Todd doesn't blame Mariko for why his request was stupid. With Todd gone, Yoshi orders him to choose Mariko's side, his or John's. Mariko swears she only supports Yoshi and wants to end her life, but Yoshi throws the dagger away. It's time for the assembly. Saegi's army approaches. The two brothers turn against each other, and Yoshi agrees to go to Osaka. But these are not the words his men have been waiting for. John stands up and scorns Yoshi's choice, then leaves. That afternoon, Seigi came to the tea house to fall into Yoshi's trap. Seigi tries to escape, but his long robes prevent him from moving and he stumbles. Yoshi takes a swing that cuts off his uncle's life, but he too slips, crushes his head, and dies. As they approach the city, John is given his diary. He doesn't have to surrender to the council with them. John asks Mareka not to go to Osaka, but her loyalty leaves her no choice. At this time, Ishido proposes to Ochibo to strengthen their alliance through marriage. She can't answer, and Ishido offers to think about it. Closer to bedtime, everyone remembers Yoshi, only on the best side. Omisame says that Yoshi gave his life for one single purpose, to serve Yoshi. Afterwards, the funeral takes place, and Yoshi watches from afar. While walking through town, Martin runs into John. He says he has urgent business for Yoshi. John has other plans, to get his ship back and find the black ship. A little later, Martin drives into the castle and greets Mariko. Everyone gathers in the hall. Martin says that the church tried to sway the council to Yoshi's side, but it didn't work. Yoshi already knew that. He appoints Mariko to be a translator for Martin. Since the church is no longer their ally and they are not allowed to speak Japanese, Martin says the church didn't send him here. It was his decision. He assures that Ochiba is behind everything, but he doesn't understand the reason for her anger. The priest suggests that Yoshi marry Ochiba and Ishido will lose power. The heir's army will side with Yoshi. Mariko is sure that Yoshi is not an enemy to Ochibo. Yoshi chooses to lose in peace anyway. His son is dead, and he will not allow further bloodshed. Each vassal must swear in writing that they will surrender with Yoshi, and before Yoshi leaves, he allows a church to be built in the land. When he returns home, Todd makes the perfect tea. He says he learned it especially for Mariko. Todd suspects that they will soon die and remembers their early days, and so, as not to drag on too long, he offers to accept death today. Mariko refuses. She would rather live another 1,000 years than die with him. And as soon as she's gone, Todd starts to cry. Late at night, John finds his crew, and they clearly weren't bored. John tries to leave, but Salomon notices him. He says there are 6 sailors left alive. John offers to go home, but Salomon refuses. Salomon has already realized that from the start, John led them to Japan because of his ambition to be the first Englishman to enter the Straits. The price is the lives of the crew. A fight breaks out, which John quickly wins. In the morning, he comes to Yabushige and offers to use his ship under Yabushige's flag, but he refuses. John remembers the day Yabushige almost died at the cliff and his ability to take fate into his own hands. Yabushige refuses again. As Martin looks around the site where the church will stand, he notices other people and is told that they are his future neighbors, the tea houses. Yoshi's wassail meeting begins. He wants Yabushige to go to Osaka tomorrow with all his weapons, and the others must sign a document vowing to surrender, but everyone is ready to end their lives. They propose to stay in Eshido and wait for Ishido's army here. For Yoshi, the survival of Japan is much more important than the survival of his clan. Hiramatsu says that he has always been on Yoshi's side even when he was a child, but now Yoshi is betraying everything they fought for. Yoshi has no intention of changing his mind. Hiramatsu threatens to make seppuku, but that doesn't scare Yoshi. Todd asks his father's permission to follow him, but he forbids it. They must understand the feeling of those forbidden to die and never betray the Lord, even if they think Yoshi has betrayed himself. The man is then killed, and his executioner is Todd himself. When Yoshi meets Mariko, he confesses that Hiramatsu was a very clever and brave friend. It is very important that Osaka believes they are surrendering, and now Mariko must fulfill their part of the bargain. Yabushige has changed his mind and has gone over to John's side, but another boat appears on the horizon. On Yoshi's orders, Mariko must go with him to Osaka. Before leaving, Yoshi visits Yoshi's grave. He thanks him and Hiramatsu for their time and swears that he will not let them down. 14 years ago, Mariko was found by the samurai. Martin asked to be alone with her. He, like Mariko, has known the sadness of loss, but he believes that God let him live because he had a plan, and now God has spared her. Then he gives her a cross. In real time, the ship has arrived in Osaka. John wonders why Yoshi sent her here, but she says nothing. Yabushige asks to stay close to him when they arrive at the castle. Tomorrow they will have a private meeting with Ishido where they will make him a lucrative offer. The captain of the black ship has noticed John and is sure that Yoshi is up to something. Martin says John has been relieved of duty and Yoshi has clearly given up. Even his most loyal vassal committed suicide, but the priest is sure that war will break out soon. Before the meeting, Yabushige teaches him how to swear properly. Kiyamo is pleased that John himself has come into his hands, but Yabushige asks that John not be dragged into the church's squabbles. He will now serve Ishido under the leadership of Yabushige. The meeting begins. The heir immediately notices the barbarian. Yabushige begins to explain that he has not betrayed Ishido and offers to look at his gift. However, Ishido is not interested in cooperating with the barbarians. After them, Mariko enters the hall. She congratulates Ishido and Ochibo on their engagement. Ochibo offers to participate in a poetry contest, but Mariko refuses. Tomorrow she leaves town with Kirino and Shiso and will return with Yoshi, unless of course they're prisoners. Ishido denies it, but tries to detain her. Mariko reminds him that she's not a peasant and won't allow her rights to be violated. Everyone here can go wherever and whenever they want. Later, Yabushige asks what even happened. Apparently, Yoshi made her say it, and asks her to tell about their plan, and then Yabushige can help them. But she can't say anything, and she asks John to stay out of it. Tomorrow, even her son says that if she tries to leave, he won't call himself her son anymore. Mariko, however, continues on with her task. The exit from the castle is blocked by warriors. Mariko's samurai kills 2 of the guards, but the other guards are still not willing to let them pass. An archer wounds a samurai, and a battle begins. But because of the archers, her squad loses. Mariko proves to the important families that they are all seen as prisoners. However, the guards have no rights to kill Mariko herself, because of which she attacks them, but the forces are clearly not equal. Mariko screams that she was not allowed to carry out her suzerain's orders, and she cannot go on living with such shame. Tonight at sunset, she will perform seppuku. and Kiyamo must help her with it. Some people think it's a bluff, but Ochiba is sure it's true. If Marika dies, all the noble families will revolt. Later, the heir wants an audience with John, and Marika is chosen to be the interpreter. Marika asks her friend to end this game, but she says she doesn't have that kind of opportunity. John asks not to die for Yoshi's goal. Marika is sure she has no other option. John then asks to live for him. Mariko takes his hand and leaves. Ishido has accepted Yabushige's offer. Mariko has come to Martin's house to absolve her sins. Evening has come. John has a hard time watching Mariko prepare for seppuku. No one comes out to take the sin of murder. And then John walks up. She gives him the cross, and at the very last moment, Ishido enters, with permission to leave the castle, and John breathes a sigh of relief. Late in the evening, John stops by Mariko's house with a follow-up show. At this time, Yobisudi starts killing Yoshi's men, and hooks begin to be attached to the castle walls. A squad of assassins infiltrate the castle and kill everyone in their path. A little later, Yabushige issues an alert. The duo are attacked. John uses swords and a pistol to kill the enemies. While walking down a hallway, they encounter Yabushige. John shoots through the walls, killing the shinobi. And Mariko suggests mating in a warehouse. The door there is very sturdy. However, Yabushige wants to go to the gate, but Mariko chooses the warehouse. The group fights their way into the warehouse. The shinobi want to blow up the door. John is not afraid of this and tries to move the crates. Suddenly, there is an explosion. John survives, but Mariko is killed. Many of the council regret not letting her out of the castle. Yoshi was stunned by this news and comes out with an army. Ishido accuses Yoshi of killing Mariko, all for the sake of discord within the council. Ishido then comes to see Yabushige. After Yoshi's death, he is given a seat on the council, but because of the explosion, Yabushige starts to go a little crazy. When John regains consciousness, he is taken to Kiyamo's men, led by Martin, and takes him into the woods. This is where they ambushed him last time, but Martin promises he'll be released alive, all thanks to Mariko, who begs John to be spared, and he sails away in tears. When they return to the village of Yabushige, John's ship has already been destroyed. He is told that the Christians did it. Yabushige is brought to Yoshi's house. His men saw Yabushige let the assassins in. He has to confess. Tomorrow, Yabushige has to do seppuku. John returns to his home, but it feels different when Marikov isn't around. Yoshi receives a letter from Ochiba's secret messenger. Inside were Mariko's poems. Fuji tells John that she will leave him tomorrow. Yoshi gives her permission to become a nun. John asks to stay, but she can't honor his request. A new day arrives. John is taken to Yoshi's house. Miraji confesses that he is Yoshi's spy, and they will find the men who destroyed the ship. John pleads in Japanese not to punish the villagers. The ship was destroyed by Marika, who made a pact with the Catholics. Yoshi refuses. John is willing to die to save the villagers. Wrapping his sword around a cross, John starts to wound himself, but Yoshi stops him, as John still has to repair his ship and build a large fleet. A little later, Yabushige arrives at the appointed place. Turns out Yoshi knew about Mariko's plan. He was the one who burned the ship to test John's action. One day, he will tell him the truth. Yoshi believes it is John's destiny to never leave Japan. Before he dies, Yabushige wants to understand how Yoshi wants to fulfill the Crimson Sky. Yoshi is surprised that after so many years of service, he has yet to understand. The Crimson Sky has already been completed. As long as the regents are unanimous, sending an army is useless. But just one woman has shattered their unification. In just 1 month, the battle will begin. 5 mighty armies will meet on the same field. If the heir's army was on Ishido's side, they would be defeated. But Mariko's actions have convinced Ochibo that she doesn't need an alliance with Ishido. She vowed not to send the heir's army. Yabushige calls it hypocrisy to waste people's lives for the sake of a single victory. Deep down, Yoshi is just like them. Then Yabushige dies. After a while, John is approached by Todd to help pull the ship from the bottom. It's only by working together that they pull the ship out. The season ends with John and Yoshi looking at each other. And if you want a sequel, just tell us in the comments. We'd also love your likes for such a great video. We'll be back soon. Bye.